Hi guys, it's me at Nerdy Nurse. If you follow me on Instagram, you already know who I am. If you don't know who I am, well, hi, my name's Alyssa. I'm a nurse. I read a lot. I've had a Bookstagrammer account for about 8 months, and I've been starting to dabble in making videos over on IGTV, and I've had a few people say that I should make YouTube videos. So here I am over in the BookTube space, and we're gonna give this a try. I'm not really sure how this is gonna go. I'm using a different camera so I can actually see myself now, which is really freaking weird. It's just weird talking to yourself. YouTube problems. But we're gonna give this a try. So my first video, I figured we will start with my January wrap up. It would be nice if we had started with my TBR, but I was too chicken shit to actually start a YouTube channel at the beginning of the year. That's the truth. So I did it on Instagram because at least new people would watch it. But hopefully somebody sees this and you enjoy this, and I will keep making content here, I guess, for as long as people are interested or as long as I am. So cheers. All right, guys, I scooted you back because you're too close. Go away. So this year, so that I actually know what I'm reading, I decided to download a template. I think it's from Book Riot. I could be wrong. I don't know my TBR. Books I've read. It's to keep track of everything I've read this year. So I have this beautiful reading log that keeps track of all kinds of things. Ooh, look at that glare. So let's just start at the beginning, and we will work our way down the list of books that I have read this month. So first off, I read Lair of Dreams, which is the second book in the Diviner series. If you watched my January wrap up, that's over on Instagram, and the account there is just at Nerdy Nurse Reads. You already know how much I love the Diviner series. If you've never heard of it, it's like set in 1920s. There's these people with supernatural powers. They're trying to figure out, one, why they all exist, who created them, all of that. There's this whole secret society that's around them and government agency. And then there's these subplots in each book of some sort of supernatural weird goings on that are happening in New York in the 20s, and they have to solve that mystery. And they're really spooky, and they're absolutely excellent, and the last one comes out this month. I thought it was coming out like at the beginning of the month, but I guess it's actually coming out at the end of the month now, which is really sad, but gives me some more time to read some other things, because I've got one more to read before that last one. So there's 4 books in the series. I'm reading book 3 this month so that I can get caught up so I can finish the series. So that was really super good. I think I gave that like 5 stars. Yeah, I gave that 5 stars. Super good. If you've never read it, try it. It's by Libba Bray. The next book I read was Wicked Saints, which I actually do have a hard copy of, and I enjoyed this book, I guess. It's like fantasy YA. It's kind of like Russian setting. There's like blood magic and this like magic from the gods, and these 2 countries that each have their magic, the blood magic and the other. They're sort of fighting. It ends on a cliffhanger. The sequel comes out this year in a couple months, I think. I think it comes out in like March or maybe May. I'll write it somewhere. And it was really good. I just wish it had been a little longer. It's a little short. It could have used a little bit of more time to grow the story and do a little world building. But in general, I really liked the plot. I liked the idea of this book. I just actually wanted more. So I guess it's good that there's a sequel coming out. 3.5 stars. Mainly because it was a really good plot, but I needed a little more. Next up, I read The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. It's my first ever Donna Tartt, and this book was amazing. If you watched that that mid-month update or check-in, you'll know how much I love this book. It's literally just like the most beautifully written book about the messiness of life and how life is lived in the gray area. Things are not black and white. It just follows this boy from a young age when he loses his mother through to adulthood, and just him sorting his shit out, basically. And it's really good. I gave this 5 stars. Donna Tartt is an amazing writer. It is a beefy book. It doesn't look that beefy, but it's like 700 pages, I think. Yeah, it's almost 800 pages, and I enjoyed every second of it. I would recommend that you read this. 5 stars. Like, it's so good. I've already gushed about it. if you want to see me gush in all of my glory, like right after reading it, go over to Instagram. You can see me. Anyway, so I have a lot of 5-star reads this month, and I think that one, it's because I'm easy to please, and two, I either like absolutely love a book, and so I give it 5 stars because I'm like, what makes a 5-star review? If it gives me all the feels and it's written well and I enjoyed it and I couldn't put it down, then it's like 5 stars. If I was struggling to get through it, then, or if I felt like something was missing, then it's maybe like 3. If I can't get through it, I just don't read it. The next book I read was Illuminae by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman, and this is the first in the Illuminae Files series trilogy. I need to get Gemina. This book is amazing. It's this multimedia, like, amazing experience. It's a sci-fi YA set in space. There's this crazy AI. There's a little bit of a love story. Katie and Ezra are just so heartwarming. They're a little love story. I do love them. I also listened to the audiobook while I read this, and the audiobook is like a full cast, and it's got sound effects, and it's very theatrical, and when you do these two together, it is the most immersive experience that I've ever had reading a story, which was fantastic. So I highly recommend pairing those two together. Yeah, go for it. 5 stars. I do that a lot, actually. I do listen to both the audiobook and I read most of my books. Sort of, I go back and forth because one, I drive a long way to work, so I can get a lot of reading done in that time by listening, and two, I find that I just kind of get through more books that way, and I like to also know if the audiobooks are good, and the only way to know if the audiobooks are good is to just try them. So yeah, there's my rant for audiobooks, or my plug for audiobooks. Go right to get an audiobook. They're great. I recommend Illuminae. Start there. You'll love it. Or Sadie. That one's good too. Anyway, back to my list. So next up, we have The Glittering Hour, which was my book of the month pick for December, which I read in January because I never read them in the same month. Because does anybody, like, tell me below, has anybody actually read their book of the month? Somebody's got to be good and reads their book of the month, like, every month. Like, a good little reader. And I don't, okay? I have stacks of them. I need to do a month where that's like all I do is read all the ones that I've just bought because I want them, and then I never read them. But anyway, this was a beautiful book. I've got this whole 1920s theme. I guess you can guess why, because duh, it's 2020. And I love the 20s. So the Roaring 20s was this really beautifully fantastic period of time, sort of between two wars, where, you know, women are starting to get liberated and people are just trying to forget, like, the horrors of World War I, and I don't know what they're stumbling into yet with the Depression and World War II, and it's just, I love it. So this is a beautiful story by Iona Gray that follows a daughter and her mother, and you have two timelines, and the daughter and mother are exchanging letters about the mother's life in like 1925 and the daughter's in like 1936, and it's just, it's beautiful. There's a beautiful love story in here. There's a beautiful mother and daughter bond that's going on. There's family, ooh, my computer's thinking. There's family dynamic stuff that goes on. It's really beautiful, and it's a quick read, and it's big font if that's something people like, and yeah, I would highly recommend this. I believe I also gave this 5 stars. Next up is my first nonfiction of the year. I'm trying to read 6 nonfiction books this year. I'm trying to read 6 nonfiction books this year. This was recommended by my friend Maggie. She actually sent it to myself and my friend Karen, and the 3 of us sort of read it and talked about it in our regular weekly group chat. But it's by Malcolm Gladwell. He did like The Outliers and some other books and he has like a podcast. People know him. Anyway, so this is a really interesting book that talks about, this is called Talking to Strangers, and it talks about basically how do we understand truth and lies, and how do we read people, and how do we know people are telling us the truth, and it goes through some famous cases and news stories and examines them. Basically, it says that we're rubbish at telling if people are telling the truth. Like, we really are good at telling when people are telling the truth. That's actually, let me rephrase this. According to this book, we are very good at figuring out who's telling us the truth. In general, we suck at figuring out that people are lying to us. We have a tendency as human beings to lean towards everybody's telling me the truth. So It's hard for us to tell when people are lying, especially if people don't behave in the norm. So if we can misread somebody who's a little bit strange, I mean, who here is a little strange? So it's easy to misinterpret people that aren't normal. All right, guys, I don't know what happened. Some of my footage went away. But anyways, like I was saying, Talking with Strangers was really good read, really interesting. If you want to look at a quick, good nonfiction, I would give this a try. It was really fascinating. The next thing I read was Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. This was a super sweet novel, fantasy YA. There's a magical library. It reminded me a lot of Hogwarts. The main character is really sweet and kind of badass, and I like her, and she's got like a sweet little love story. There's sorcery and demons, and I really would like, actually, if she would make more, because I'd like to see how their stories continue at the end. But this one surprised me. I really didn't think I was going to like this, but actually, all in all, it was beautiful. So I'm super, super happy I read that. And Sorcery of Thorns, I gave 4 stars. 4 stars for Sorcery of Thorns. I'm kind of rushing because I don't know what my camera is doing, so I don't have to like keep reviewing footage and filling in. So that's why things might look a little weird or different.
I'm not sure I understand.
Shh, Siri, don't talkie. So anyway, so let's rush because I don't want to keep refilming things because my camera's doing weird stuff. Maybe I just need a real camera. The thing I read was my first Ruta Sepidus, which is Fountains of Silence. This is set just after the Spanish Civil War, when America comes in and starts making these deals with Franco. It is a beautifully told story. I think I gave this 4.5 stars. 4.5 stars. I'm mad that I didn't know more about this time period than I do. It's like they told us all about World War II and Hitler, but they just kind of glanced over, in my education at least, the Civil War. They were just kind of like, yeah, there was a Spanish Civil War, now back to Hitler. So this was really fascinating and made me kind of angry, but like in a good way, because it's so well written. And something about it just reminded me so much of my trip to Cuba back in the early 2000s. That whole dichotomy between what the kind of lavish life that tourists get to lead compared to the life of just regular people who live there. And I don't know, it was beautiful. I highly, highly recommend it. The next thing I read was A Curse So Dark and Lonely, which I don't have a nice copy because I gave it away as a giveaway because I bought 2, and this is from Book Outlet, and this was the ugly one, and I gave the pretty one away. I do a lot of Instagram giveaways. Ooh. He's gonna keep barking, so ignore him. But I do a lot of Instagram giveaways, so check me out over there. Like every few months I do one, and I'm probably about due for one because we hit 1,000 followers. We're over 1,000 now, so it's time for me to do something for everybody. But this is a Beauty and Beast retelling. It's really sweet. Is it my favorite book of the year? No, I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought the main character was really cool. She has cerebral palsy and she's really badass, and she doesn't end up in the magical fairyland where the beast is and just lose that disability and become normal. She keeps being a badass with cerebral palsy, and if anything, it just makes her more badass. So it's a really good book, and I'm excited to read the second one. Even though this isn't like a 5-star read, I am excited to read the second one because Gray, who's the Beast's like sidekick, I think is going to be a big part of the second book, like the main focus, or at least his backstory is going to be a big part of it, and he was a really, really cool character, so I'm really excited for that. The other thing I did as a buddy read was actually I read Little Women, which was interesting to read now and reflect back on. The movie was really, really good. I suggest you go watch the movie if you haven't. It was really well done. You can hear my dogs running around downstairs. But there were parts of this book that were kind of problematic from like a feminist point of view in modern 2020. Like Meg's whole storyline's a little hard. The whole like, you don't really have a life if you don't get married was kind of hard. But in general, the writing's really good. I love Demi. Meg's son is so freaking cute. Anyway, but it was really good, and I'm really glad that I read it, because I'm sure I read it when I was younger. I feel like I read parts of it when I was younger, but I didn't read all of it, and so it was nice to read this after seeing the movie, which I bawled my eyes out for. I think I gave this 4 stars just because it's a classic, and it's hard to like rate a classic because it's good for a reason, right? Anyway, so next up, I decided to read Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, which I don't know how I feel about this. So this is one of the first novels that's sort of written in stream of consciousness. It was really interesting exercise as a reader to read this book, and I feel like I need to read this every year. Ooh, look at me setting up a precedent. I feel like I need to revisit this book often. I mean, it's only 190 something pages. This is the book that probably took me the longest to read, because sometimes it's really hard to stay focused in the storyline because it's stream of consciousness. But there's a lot that's going on in this, because it's like every time a character passes another character in the street, you sort of jump brains, which is cool, but also really hard to focus, and you don't know where you are in the story sometimes. So my brain would lose focus, and then I would stop paying attention, and then I'd be like, what the hell has just happened for 3 or 4 paragraphs? So it was a little hard. I tried to listen to it as well, but the version that's on Scribd is terrible. I'm just gonna say that right up. Scribd I love. Scribd is amazing. Scribd, don't hate me. But your version of Mrs. Dalloway needs to be replaced, because there's chunks of it that repeat itself. So every so often I would dive into the audiobook to try to refocus me, and then into the text, and I'd be listening and it would be fine, and then suddenly it would be repeating a page that happened like 30 pages ago, and it would only do that for a few minutes, and then it would sort of sync back up to where I actually was in the story. And because this is stream of consciousness, and because I'm already confused reading this, I'm like, what is she just repeating herself? So I think that she's repeating herself, and then I have to go get the text out of them. I'm like, wait, no, she's not repeating it. It was a mess. Scribd, please change that. Get a different version. Get a version that isn't messed up, please. Anyway, like I said, I have to revisit this because the writing was good. It was beautiful. The concept is interesting. I think the themes that are discussed in it are interesting, like mental health, PTSD, romance, relationships, that kind of stuff. Those sorts of themes in it, like all crammed into this little book. But it's hard to read. But I'm going to read you again, okay? And I'm gonna master, I'm gonna understand you. I will understand this. Ooh. So, out of the gate, I gave Mrs. Dalloway 2.5 stars. I'll see you in January, Virginia. I read one graphic novel this month, and it was the first Witcher graphic novel. And it's by Paul Tobin, and it was really beautiful, and I really enjoyed it. And I read it on my Kindle, so I don't have it on my Kindle, so I don't have it here. But I can tell you that it was really cool reading a graphic novel on your Kindle, because like every like box for the comic strip, you kind of just like, you would double tap in them, or if you double tapped in, it would zoom into like the little box instead of like having the whole big page with all the boxes. And then as you swiped, it would just swipe from box to box to box to box, and it was really a cool experience. So I kind of feel like I want to read more graphic novels on my Kindle. I don't really like writing things on Kindle. I prefer books, but that was so cool. It was like I was interacting with the comic. It was awesome. I think I gave that like 4 stars or something. I gave it 3 stars. It was an interesting story. The artwork was beautiful. I wish I had more to show you, but I had to return it to the library. But yeah. So next up, I got to read The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones. And this book is so good. I have 2 words for you. Undead Goat. Read it. It was good. Give me more. I think this is her debut novel. I want another one. Give it to me. 4 stars. Undead Goat. I read another nonfiction book this month, and this is going to be shortly leaving my little library and going to a friend who really wants to read this. But it's American Predator, which is about the serial killer that was killing in Alaska and a few other places, and he's super creepy. True crime novel. It's written by a journalist, and it's got lots of interviews and stuff with the detectives that were on the case, and it was creepy. I mean, it was all right. I think the story was really good. I don't know if I like true crime like this. I think I like true crime as a like television series, as a podcast. This isn't the media I think that I like to consume true crime. Or it's just this book, because this is the first one I've read like this. So we'll have to dabble a little bit more into it. But I don't think that this is the way that I like to consume it, because I do love true crime. I love My Favorite Murder. I love watching like things on Netflix about everybody who kills everybody. I love watching, you know, women who kill and all that stuff. So like I like true crime stories. I think I just really, as a child of like the 80s and 90s, I think I just want that reenactment goodness. Because, you know, I grew up with unsolved mysteries or unsolved murders, or what was that stupid show that we used to watch with the guy? Hold please while I Google. Unsolved mysteries. Unsolved mysteries. So I grew up watching unsolved mysteries, you know, with that guy. Yeah. That's the way I like it. I like cheesy reenactments. I like dramatic narration. I gave this 3.5 stars because the story is really good. I just don't know if this is my favorite way to consume true crime. That's it. Which is not a fault to the book. That's just me. Alright, so next up I read Roses and Wrought by Kat Howard. I did a whole post on this. This book was surprisingly good. Paperback Hoarder talked about it so much in the last few months that like I had to pick it up, and it's a really beautiful book, like looking, and it's also a really beautiful story. You've got sisters, you've got competition, you've got art, you've got horrible abusive mother-daughter relationships, you've got fairies, you've got fantasy. It's really good, and I need to read more by Kat Howard. This was her debut book. It's a little old. I think it's from like 2016, and I'm really glad that I got a chance to read it, and I highly recommend it. A lot of people, when I did my review on Instagram, were like, I've never heard of this. What is this book? I've never even heard of this author. So I highly recommend that you go out and, 1, find this book and read it, and 2, find other titles. I think she's got at least one other title, which I need to get. Why is my voice going all like cracky? We need coffee. Hold on. Too much talking. So yeah, highly recommend this. I gave this 4 stars. Next up, I was forced to read, and I read it on my Kindle because I borrowed it from the library, A Court of Mist and Fury. We all know, or maybe you don't because we're just meeting for the first time here, YouTube. Hey, YouTube again. I disliked A Court of Thorn and Roses. I thought it was stupid. I thought Farrah was awful. Tamlin was stupid. Rysand was like, whatever. She said "Ma" one more time, I was gonna punch the book. It was terrible. But my chat group one of my chat groups I have on Bookstagram, they told me I have to read this book. I have to read the second one. It's gonna get better. You're gonna love it. It's smuttier. Rysand's amazing. Blah 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 blah. Fine, they were right. It's amazing. 5 stars. I'm reading the last, well, not the last one, because I've heard that the novella is stupid. I'm not reading the novella. It's stupid. It's a trilogy. It should have 3 books. That's it. I'm not reading a 4th one. But I'm on the 3rd book right now. And I'm sorry, Rysand. How the fuck do I say his name? People, tell me. Rysand? Reese. Reese is beautiful. And amazing and supportive, and that's what I want in my life, and I need my like fairy dark king. Aww. Alright, 5 stars. It's good. Move on. I have to get the hard copies of these 2 because I borrowed the other one from the library too, and I need it. The next book I read, I just DNF'd, and it's My Sister the Serial Killer, because it was just awful. I was trying to read it. It's a short book. It's written in first person, which I don't hate first person. I know that a lot of people dislike first person narration, but I think you have to do it right. I think it's a really easy form of, it's a really easy thing to screw up. And when you screw it up bad. And it starts to sound like something you might have written in like middle school. I know, I don't know why I'm going to hate on this book so hard. I read like 30 pages of it. I'm going to hate on it. But I thought that this was going to be a fantastic book. Like, you've got this one sister who's a nurse, and she keeps having to clean up after her other sister because her other sister keeps killing her boyfriends, and it's a little bit, they're supposed to be snarky and kind of dark humor. All of this is me. Like, I love it. I just couldn't, it just felt like something I could have written when I was younger. I don't understand why I got all these awards. Like, it just wasn't for me. So I stopped it, and I had a whole long discussion with my Bookstagram friends about whether or not I should keep reading this, because I felt like a jackass because it's got all these awards and it's supposed to be so good, and I was not meant to read it. Moving on. Too much time spent on a book that I disliked. Forget it. We're not doing it. Next up, I read the Starless See, which I also have a review on my Bookstagram account if you want to see that. But I was thoroughly surprised by this book. I absolutely loathe the night circus. Sort of the theme of January is finding out that things that I thought I might hate or things that I disliked, maybe I don't hate. It was a lot of giving things second chances and discovering that they were worth the second chance. So a lot of the things I disliked about the night circus weren't in this book. Erin Morgenstern is a fantastic writer. Night Circus, the Starless See, doesn't matter. She's a fantastic writer. She can write the shit out of a book. But her plot, if judging by the Night Circus, her ability to write a good plot that's engaging and action driven and like just has something that drives it forward with any amount of force, needs some work. This is an amazing improvement on that. Anyway, so yeah, so I think that I lost some footage again, so we're gonna pick up on my Starless See thing. I really need a different camera. So I really love this book. I think that it was really beautifully written. I still think there's some things that are problematic with Erin Morgenstern. I don't like that there's this, like, you just have to assume that the main characters have chemistry and that that's why they're in love, because just like in the Night Circus, it's like suddenly these people are madly in love and you're like, but how, when, why? And I don't understand, because she can write love beautifully. So there's a sub story in here of like the man who falls in love with the moon, and this little story is just so full of passion and love, and you can see it and it's beautiful and you feel it. But then the main characters, I just feel like it's like, I saw him at a bar and I loved him, I knew. And you're like, did you? But how? Why? And maybe I don't do love at first sight. Maybe that's what it is, but I'm really glad that I gave Erin Morgenstern a second chance, because I wanted to love the Night Circus so bad because the writing was so good, but I just couldn't. And I'm glad that I have a book by her that I do love. And I'll need to go back to this, because this book is not an easy book. It's very cerebral. It takes a lot of brain to read this, because there's stories within stories within stories. There's layers and metaphors, and there's things that I know that I've missed. So I will have to go back and read this again and pick up on those things that I missed, because there's so many subtleties in her writing, and especially in this writing because it's so layered. But it was absolutely beautiful. And if you didn't like the Night Circus, but like you liked her writing, but you just couldn't get on board with the Night Circus because, you know, because it's bad. That's my opinion. But for me, it's the plot. There was like, the plot was just all wrong in that book. That was all atmosphere and no plot, and I don't like that. If I want a book without a plot, I'll read Moby Dick. But this has a plot. It's like a little bit more adventurous. It's got a little bit more action. I mean, it's not like a fantasy action, but it's got more going on in it. I would recommend this if that's what you were missing in the Night Circus. If you read the Night Circus and you were like falling asleep and you didn't like it and you were getting angry and you were like, what the hell is the point of this book? Where is this going? What the heck is this clock? All this stuff. I would try this, because I think I think you'd like this. But know that it's going to take a little bit of work. It takes some brain power to read this book. It's not a breezy read. So, you know, be prepared and in the right headspace to really sit and consume this slowly and methodically. But I give this 4.5 stars. Took off half a star because of that stupid chemistry thing. It's like, learn how to make chemistry between your main characters. Anyway, yeah. So the last thing I read was a little mystery called The Case of the Gilded Fly by Edmund Crispin. It's this British writer from the 40s. It's set in Oxford. There's a murder. It was cute. There's a lot of, it's kind of like P.D. James. Yeah, it's kind of like P.D. James. That whole like Jews in Worcester. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It's a little bit crazy, outlandish and humorous, but in like a kind of dark, subtle, sarcastic way that I really like, that Brits really do well. There's a lot of reference to like classical literature, which I didn't understand actually. It went right over my head, but in general the plot was very good. I did not like that there's like a lot of slut shaming in this, but I think that's one part of the time, and two, part of the structure of the narrative, to make sure that you really hate this woman that gets murdered, and like you have a reason why all these other characters hate this woman who gets murdered, and so you can point your fingers at all of them. But basically, it's all centered around a play. So there's actors, producers, directors, and they're in like Cambridge, or is it Oxford? I don't know. Oxford, sorry, in Oxford, and there's this Oxford Don who ends up solving the murder. He's like an amateur sleuth. This is the first book in the series, so you sort of get introduced to him, and all the other kind of like police officers and other main characters. And it was just like a nice breezy read and a nice way to clear the palate, the mental palate, after reading the Starless See. I gave it 3 stars, I think. I mean, it wasn't the best thing in the world, but I mean, I have another one from Book Outlet that I got at the out of my recent Book Outlet haul, and I'm excited to read them eventually. I like little books like this because they're nice to read after you read a more cerebral book like this. So you kind of like clear the palate through like really heavy book, nice light book, to transition you into the next one. So that's everything I read this month. I'm sorry for all the in and outs and like little like continuity issues. I don't really know what's going on with my camera, and I just need to not have like a $80 camera. Maybe I need a real camera, but in time. So it just doesn't like to film long clips, I guess. So we'll have to do this in chunks. Anyway, well, I hope you enjoy this. If you don't already, please subscribe, like, share this. Let me know what you'd like to see down below. If you have any comments or questions or anything, just like leave them down there. And then if you don't already, please follow me over on Instagram. I do a lot of posting over there, and I'm very interactive with everybody who comments and sends me DMs and all of that. So that's really like my main area of focus. I really love the whole Bookstagram community. I think everybody over there is really lovely, and if you haven't already become a part of that, I would do it because everyone's just really supportive and nice. But I hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully all my little clips worked out just fine. And yeah, have a great day, and thanks so much. Bye.